I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, this morning, this is a workshop. Public notice, this is statement of adherence to South Carolina FOIA. Public notice of this meeting has been published, posted, and distributed in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Without objection, we will approve the agenda. Just have a few brief remarks this morning before we start, and also our Vice Chairman has a few remarks. I'd like to thank everyone here for being at our first workshop of 2025. The focus is the training by Mr. John Deloach of the South Carolina Association of Counties, and also opportunities for participation and questions by the council later in the meeting. We will have a short break after his presentation and discussion with questions by council members of him, and then we will do further work and discussion on the mechanics and administration of Beaufort County's new year. Ms. Tabernack, do you have any comments before we start?
Well, one thing I'll reiterate what I said when I was elected. We had a couple of challenging years. It was my first two on council, but I want to remember that we did a lot of good things. Our chair led us through the tough times, but I just want to recall some of the good things we did, because unfortunately it doesn't make the newspaper. Only the challenges make it. So for one, we hired a new administrator. After a thorough vetting, he rose to the top, and he's been working hard, hitting the ground running. We did a thorough budget process. It dragged on for several times. Mr. Robinson led us through that, and Denise was here. We vetted our requests, and we were able to keep the millage the same. We did a thorough ATAX review of our code in line with South Carolina code and the implementation, and we seated a full committee, and I think they did a thorough, objective job. We did outreach to the community. We did chat with council. We did 4 of them. I personally thought they were well received, and I thought they went well, but I'm used to chats, so that was fine. We also did the referendum meetings, trying to reach out to the community, so that's our outreach. We kicked off and implemented the green space penny. So the committee was seated. Ms. Howard sits, she's vice chair of that committee, and we had 2 major things we bought, and that was Gregory Neck, which was well received, and Mitchellville, which is well received. We implemented some capital projects. I didn't list them all, but some of them were improvements to our workspace for our employees, so things are better for them. Some were improvements to our passive parks and other recreational spaces. We attended ribbon cuttings. Those are always fun. Our Emerging Leaders Program, thanks to Jared and some of the others, was recognized at SCAC. It's a great program, and I'm so glad we can support it. Many of us participated in classes at SCAC, South Carolina Association of Counties. I have to stop using all the acronyms, but for the public that's listening, we went to classes. Joe represented us on the board there. He's a representative. We talked in committees, and I thought that was a great way for new people to learn and veterans to meet with other people. And we increased our relationships with the municipalities and adjacent counties. So I don't want us to forget the good things we did. And there are always good things, and when we talk to reporters, I highlighted, how about once in a while talk about the good things? I know it doesn't sell newspapers, I get it, I got it, but there are some good things we do, a lot of them, and I want us to recognize that. So we're looking forward to 2 years of doing some good things. Thank you.
Before we turn it over to Mr. John Deloach, at the end of this meeting, we'll do a round robin with all the council members in case anyone wants to share briefly any news from their district, because some things have happened since 2024, believe it or not, and that are coming up this week and next week that we want to share with the public. So we will turn it over to Mr. John Deloach, and this is a forum where any council member, would you prefer we ask our questions at the end or during?
It's however you want to do it. We can do this very informally and just ask me
That would be great.
as we
Okay.
go along.
All right, that would be great. Thank you. Do we have anyone on Zoom, Ms. Brock? No, okay, thank you.
Well, good morning, y'all.
Good morning.
I'm glad y'all asked me to be here. I don't think I've done a full council retreat for you since 2018, I think. Looking back, back in my records, I think that's the last time I came down here to do that. I've done a couple of sessions for your planning commission, but I'm glad to come back. I think Sarah put a folder in front of each of you, so everything I talk about is going to be in here. Copy of the slides if you want to take notes. I also took the home rule statute and kind of distilled down what's important, kind of took away some of the extraneous legalese that's in the code and shortened it down to 19 pages for you. So if you ever want to know exactly what's in it, you just glance at that very quickly. But what I want to talk about this morning is basically in a council administrator form of government, what are the roles of county council can, by ordinance, decide whether they want the auditor and treasurer appointed as county employees rather than elected officials. Otherwise, both the auditor and the treasurer are elected officials under the South Carolina Code. There was a fifth form of government called the Board of Commissioners. That was adopted by the General Assembly when they enacted the Home Rule Act in 1975. However, almost immediately that was challenged, and the South Carolina Supreme Court ruled that unconstitutional in 1970. What exactly does that mean? It means just as you have in the state government and in most states, you have a division between the legislative and the administrative functions, where you have an elected council, which is you. You are invested with all of the legislative authority for the county. You have all of the authority that's within the Home Rule Act and within various other chapters and titles of the South Carolina Code. Council then appoints a professional administrator. The administrator answers directly to council, and if you have a definite term by contract, there is a process for if you ever had to remove or change administrators. The administrator, on the other hand, they are kind of the professional administrative head of the county. They direct all of the operations and departments that are created by council. That means any of the departments such as Public Works, any of the administrative arms of the county. The administrator is the operational head of those departments, and all of the employees in those departments answer via various department heads to the administrator. Administrators that have other statutory duties which are provided in 49630, which you have in your kind of the distilled version of the Home Rule Act. Those are all of the statutory duties that the administrator has. So what are those duties? Basically, beyond serving as the administrative head of the county, they execute all of the legislative directives and ordinances that you as council enact. Again, the administrator directs the operational agencies of the county. That does not include those offices that are created by other statutes, like your treasurer, your auditor, your sheriff, all of those that are created by other areas of South Carolina law. And very importantly, especially in a county as vast and complex as Beaufort, the administrator prepares the annual, monthly, and all of the financial reports that council uses when they enact your general fund budget, your capital improvement budgets, all of those financial budgets that you adopt each year. Again, the administrator is the director of all of those personnel policies that you adopt under the Home Rule Act, and they are responsible for the employment and discharge of personnel subject to the personnel provisions of the county. And again, that doesn't only refers to those employees that work for the county and not directly for an elected official, such as the auditor and the treasurer. So when you talk about what the authority of the administrator is, you need to also understand what is your authority as a county council. And when I talk about county council, that means you as a whole, because it's different when you're acting as a whole rather than you as an individual. All of your statutory authority generally comes from Title IX, or Chapter 9 of Title 4, which is the Home Rule Act. You basically have two different types of authority. You have your general police powers. That is a provision in the Home Rule Act that just says you have the authority to enact any ordinance that is for the good government, health, safety, general welfare of the county, as long as it does not conflict with state or federal law. That is an incredibly broad authority. Counties did not have that until 1989. Municipalities have had it historically since the creation of municipality and municipal law under South Carolina law. Even when they first passed the Home Rule Act in 1975, counties only had very specific statutory authority that was provided in 4930. And that's the 17 individual specific authorities that you have, such as your ability to enact ad valorem property taxes, things, developing personnel policies, creating your individual departments and operational divisions of the county. Those were the specific authorities that you had. However, it was finally in 1989 y'all were given those general police powers, which gave you much broader authority. One of the other really broad authorities that you have is that in 49110, as a council, you have the broad authority to pass whatever rule of conduct or rule of business in conducting business of the county that you decide to, as long as it doesn't conflict with South Carolina law. That means you can structure your county council meetings in whichever way you want to, as long as you are following things like FOIA and most importantly, the Ethics Act. Other than that, the General Assembly and importantly the courts generally let you do what you need to do to get business done. And kind of a few minutes ago, I kind of started by saying that when I refer to county council, I refer to you as a body as a whole, not as individuals, because council, everything you do, you have to do as a unit or a majority body rather than individuals. And in your packet, you have a case from 2008 referred to with Wilson v. Preston. That came out of a long line of litigation that occurred up in Anderson County in the early part of the 2000s. Ms. Wilson was a member of county council. When she was first elected, it was a Democratic majority county and with a minority Republican sect within the council. And Ms. Wilson repeatedly asked the administrator for very detailed financial records, and she also wanted detailed legal documents, and including the billing statements that their outside counsel was submitting, and opinions from the attorney on a number of matters that were ongoing in the county. She had stated in open counsel and to the press that once she got those, if she wasn't happy with any of those, she was going to publicly disclose those. Well, the attorneys objected to that, as did the administrator, and it eventually led to this decision where the Supreme Court said that as an individual, Ms. Wilson was only entitled to the kind of documents that a ordinary citizen would be entitled to under FOIA. And that did not include a lot of the detailed legal opinions, because those were subject to attorney-client privilege, and the court said the client was county council as a whole, and county council as a whole had decided not to disclose those. Because, and importantly, only council as a whole can vote to disclose legal opinions, anything that's attorney-client privileged. Those are a matter for council to discuss and disclose only after a majority vote. So an individual cannot waive that attorney-client privilege.
So
Yes.
council can waive that by a simple majority?
Yes.
Okay, doesn't have to be all of council or?
No, it doesn't have to be. It would have to be a majority. But again, waiving something like that is,
Dangerous?
it's dangerous. It has to have a lot of thought before you ever waive an attorney-client privilege.
So what is the penalty for someone that releases that against council's will, or releases it before there's a majority vote to release that information?
Read my mind.
What is what's the penalty, or what can be the penalty, or what?
I mean, it's very difficult to say that there's a penalty. Certainly, council can vote to censure an individual for disclosing that. There is the possibility that an individual could be held financially liable, civilly, if it led to, say, a large monetary fine or settlement that otherwise would not have occurred without that disclosure.
Would it be an ethics violation if someone?
It potentially could be, because if the disclosure violated another part of law, such as there are things like financial privacy provisions in the criminal codes, there are, if you are disclosing personal information by a citizen, they would have potential right of litigation against that individual. But FOIA and the Ethics Act itself doesn't provide protections of that.
So part of the question on that case was the cost of outside attorneys, and they didn't want to release the costs either? That doesn't seem like attorney privilege.
The actual expenses,
Right.
those, because under FOIA, she would have been,
She could have gotten those.
she could have gotten those, and she
Okay.
did get those. What
did.
she did not get was the very detailed opinions of the attorney.
Okay.
I want to piggyback on what Mark said. So you said if somebody does release it and we don't waive privilege, they could be censured. Does that have
Yes.
to be in our rules as a council? I mean,
I think it's important to have processes in your rules if you're going to use that, but generally there doesn't have to be, because that's just an action of council. But it's best, there are certain steps that you should have in your rules, such as when is it appropriate to discipline a member? Because that's very important, because recently, last year, the Supreme Court did rule in one case that it is a legitimate legislative act for a council to discipline their members, including removing them from a meeting if their conduct is so unbecoming that it makes the meeting impossible to continue. Luckily, that did not happen anywhere down here. That occurred in a town in the upstate where the mayor had a town council member removed from a meeting after becoming very belligerent. This is unfortunately becoming more and more common throughout the United States, unfortunately. But yes, the court did say that discipline is a legislative act, and you can remove a member, but you do need to have rules and processes in place.
do you have samples of those you could share?
I can create some, yes. We can look and see what other
do
county
those-
and towns
Do
have
those
in their
same
rules.
rules apply to executive session, sharing information out of executive session with other people that weren't in there?
I think you need to have a confidentiality rule within your rules, because FOIA itself does not provide confidentiality. What it does allow is it allows you to go into a closed session to discuss those 7 items that are within the FOIA statute. But beyond that, it does not provide a confidentiality requirement.
Could it be similar to government agencies who have you sign a non-disclosure statement?
It can, yeah. Yes.
Okay. Or executive session?
Yes. And then there are certain limitations that are provided in the Home Rule Act specific to the administrative form of government that does provide some of those limitations that council has in this form of government, which you have. And I'm going to talk about a couple of them. So let's talk about the relationship between the council. Yes.
Before you move on for executive session, what's your recommendation of who should be in it, other than council members and clearly the administrator?
I think it's anyone that council needs to have in that room. So if you're discussing, if it's a legal matter, you of course, you'll need your county attorney. If you have an outside attorney that's going to be briefing you, they'll need to be in there. If anyone that's related directly to that item, they'll also need to be in the room. For example, I'll be every now and then attend executive sessions if it's a legal discussion related to a claim under the property and liability if a county is a member of that trust.
Let me ask a quick question.
Yes.
You talk about confidentiality in executive session. Where did that rule come from that generally we've been following, that you cannot disclose any information from executive session? That started somewhere.
A lot of that just started within local rules because it wasn't addressed in the FOIA statute. And just in case you know, when I refer to FOIA, that's the Freedom of Information Act. The act itself just provides that public bodies can go into a closed or, quote, executive session for 7 particular specific instances. It means that that can be a closed discussion just within council and whoever they need in there. That everyone else, press, individuals, citizens, are not supposed to be in that
Right,
room.
I got that. So more of a local,
Yes.
it's interesting. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so whenever you are, especially when you're searching for a new administrator or you are in the process of enacting a new contract, you really should establish clear goals and expectations as you as council with the administrator. It's establishing procedures for county council members to receive information as necessary without undue influence on county employees, because I'm going to get to in a minute why that's very important. There should be regular communications and strategic planning that goes on between the administrator and council. Okay, and this is one of the reasons why that last slide is important, because in the county administrator form of government, there is a part of the statute that limits and prohibits what you can do as a council or an individual council member when it comes to county officers and employees. That statute, which is 49660, says that except for the purposes of inquiries and investigations, the council shall deal with county officers and employees who are subject to the direction and supervision of the county administrator solely through the administrator, and neither the council nor its members shall give orders or instructions to any such officers or employees. One of the reasons why that's very important is that the employees that come to work here every day, they need to know that there is only one ultimate person that they have to answer to, that gives them their instructions, gives them their daily tasks, and that should be the administrator. They can't divide their loyalty between the administrator and 9 individual council members or council as a whole. If there is an issue with the way things are being done, council as a whole should look at the personnel policies in general and change those as necessary. But if you had individual council members that were giving orders or instructions to county employees, it can create not only that divided loyalty, it can ultimately lead to allegations of a hostile work environment. And under state and federal employment law, those can be time-consuming and very expensive in the end.
Take it a little bit further if you would. There's, it needs to be clear, and I think our county administrator does an excellent job at making it clear to us now, but in the past, maybe not so much. An email is the same as calling, in my mind, is calling somebody up and asking them to do something.
Yes, I think so.
And- Yeah, so, and calling an employee up that's not the county administrator or emailing, instructing would consist of being outside our lane, so to speak.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, but let me go back to that. The one thing is you also need to look at that first part of that sentence. It does, I think the General Assembly did recognize there are going to be times when you as council, you need information from county employees, from county departments in order, if you have questions about whether, if there are certain policies that are being followed, or they're being followed but they're not working, and so you as council may need to change those policies. If it's something that's part of the code of ordinances within your personnel policies, or you need to do an investigation. So the General Assembly recognized that. So that's why that first part of that sentence is in there. But in order to conduct those inquiries, to conduct that investigation, if you need that information, you need to be seeking that through the administrator. The administrator then gets it from their departments and the employees and provides it to you.
You know, something you said just kind of struck me. You know, if a county council member directs somebody to do something, an employee, without the administrator involved, you said it could lead to a hostile work environment. That is absolutely true, but never occurred to me. The loyalty part occurred to me, the stress of being a triangle with the administrator, but the hostile work environment.
Yes.
I have a question, John.
Yes.
Like a couple times when one of my constituents will ask me a question, I'll go to the ASA, the administrator, assistant administrator. But I also copy Mike on it too. So I'm asking both of them, hey, you know, my constituent would like to know if blah, blah, blah. Is that okay? Should I just go to Mike and let him go to the administrator, assistant administrator? Like I just asked Chuck a question about, one of my constituents had a question about a building.
And this comes up a lot.
Yeah. So am I doing it the right way? No? Yeah. So I'm asking you. Yeah.
I think it's fine. As long as you are
No, I mean, I
at least
copy Mike. I
working,
don't-
at least
yeah.
you're working through the administration.
Right.
With a county the size of Beaufort, where you have an administrator and you have several administrative or assistant administrators for certain departments or
Right.
certain coverage areas, as long as you are working with both of them, I think that's fine. Because
Oh, okay.
that's a process that
No.
you need to work as a council, work with the administrator, decide what kind of policy you want with that. With some of the counties, some of our smaller counties, they don't have an assistant administrator. You're going to be dealing solely with the administrator. But yeah, it's fine. As long as you're recognizing
I don't go
that
to
there is
the
a policy.
assistant administrator and say, hey, you know, we do this. No, I always involve the administrator. That's their boss.
Yes.
And he's my, you know, I work with him. So, okay, so I'm all right, but,
Yeah.
yeah. Make that clear.
You know, you got me in my mind. I'm back to executive session, I'm sorry. There are a lot of things that happen in executive sessions. And if it's not confidential, it can be revealed. Legal matters, personnel matters, what is it, where you draw the line to say what can, what cannot be? I know if you do something personnel-wise, and you kind of throw it out into the public, you may be liable for some type of lawsuit because you did that. I understand that. But where does it fall in, whether it's me personally or council as a whole will be subject to a lawsuit or something of that nature? We do legal matters, we do land purchase, all that happens. So if we decide to buy a piece of property or we speculate on a piece of property, we're in executive session, you're telling me I can come out and start letting people know that, hey, that's,
I will say
Yes, sir.
that if you ever have a question about whether something is confidential, I would, if it is discussed in executive session, until it is made public, I would not disclose it.
that's putting it on me.
Yes, as an individual.
Right.
Because everything you do as an individual comes down to you as an individual. The only way it gets to the side of the liability of council as a whole is when council as a whole is acting. Because something you might think is not that important, not confidential, can be. It can lead to a lot of negative effects later. If it's, say, a land, if you're discussing land purchase or a land development, if it is not public, if you disclosed that to someone and they acted on it, that could potentially land them and you in a insider dealing issue if they are going to use that for an economic gain that the general public wouldn't have. Be sort of the same way as if you kind of had insider information on a company and that you told someone that they then bought or sold their stock and that stock price went up or down. That is called insider trading. It could be the same potential thing there. If it is a legal issue, if you disclosed that individually, you could be waiving attorney-client privilege where you had no authority to do that. If it's other confidential information, especially if it's employment-related, the individual that is the subject to that employment decision could potentially have a civil case against you for disclosure of personal information in violation of the Personal Privacy Protection Act. And God knows if it ever involved a health-related issue, not only would they have the Privacy Act, they would have the federal HIPAA Act to go after you with. So as an individual, I would say it is almost never okay to disclose something that is discussed in an executive session without the full knowledge of counsel and that your county attorney says it's okay to disclose it.
And maybe to help with that, can you review the topics that are legitimate to go into executive session? Maybe
Yes.
that would piggyback on Mr. Glover's question.
That's, generally with county council, that's going to be, most of the time it's going to be economic development decisions that have not actually been finalized and no contracts have signed. A lot of times, if you're going to be going into executive session for that, I would have a project name I would refer it to. A lot of times, the Department of Commerce, when I was there for 3 years, we loved project names, and we used to just spend hours coming up with the perfect project name.
Yep.
There's one of the biggest economic development deals in South Carolina history until well after I left. Was something called Project Greystone. And the only reason why it got that name is that the company's U.S. CEO, his wife loved the Greystone Inn, and so we named it that.
Wow.
Still won't tell you the name of that project, even though it's been 30-plus years. Economic development issues, personnel issues. Personnel issues are always an interesting subject because the court always says you can't just say you're going into executive session to discuss personnel matter. You have to provide enough information for whatever reason you're going into executive session so that the public knows sufficiently the reason why you're going into executive session. So if you're going into executive session to discuss personnel issues, whether or not to hire new positions within Public Works, at least when you're going into executive session, the motion should be to go into executive session to discuss personnel issue related to hiring or retention of employees within the Public Works Department. That at least gives sufficient information to the public to know you're at least discussing personnel issues related to hiring or retention of Public Works. At least with Beaufort County, y'all are large enough that most of your departments don't have 1 or 2 people. There are counties that may have 1 person in a department. So if you have to go to the detail to say, we're discussing whether to retain an employee within Public Works, and there's only 1 employee within Public Works, you know exactly who they're talking about. But unfortunately, that happens. And the courts are going to say, you have to provide at least sufficient information. So besides economic development, personnel, there are other things. The discussion of like trade secrets, confidential information related to that. Legal issues, to receive legal advice. If you're going to receive legal advice and you're going to go into executive session to do that, at the least level, is if it is a suit that's been filed, refer to the General Sessions or Common Pleas docket number of that case. You don't have to name the individual, but I would at least refer to the docket number so that at least the public knows that this is an active case that you're going in to receive legal advice. If it is a potential case, I would say a potential litigation issue related to, say, if it was involving a wreck or a fall on your front steps because of ice, refer to it as a potential slip and fall claim. I'm trying to think what the other are, because a lot of them you don't particularly see too often. But employment and legal are the biggest reasons why most counties go into executive session. Yes.
Well, I'm going to go back, because obviously you can see it's an important issue for us, is, so if we go into executive session, and for whatever those reasons are, whether it's legal, whether it's property, or whether it's economic development, and someone chooses to disclose that information, so we as a council, if we find out who that person is, can censor them.
Yep.
And that we can do that whether it's in our rules or not, but it probably should be in our rules.
Yes.
It sounds like that if it's something that morally any of us could file a ethics claim against that person with y'all if we wanted to. But tell me what penalties that's what I used before, but what else is there besides just me morally saying, oh, you know what, I'm going to go to the press tomorrow and expose this. Besides just being a moral issue for me, what else is there?
Yeah, council-wise, there's not much other than just a censure. And you as an individual member of council, unless your information was the one that was disclosed, you individually couldn't file a legal complaint. It would have to be the individual related to the information that was disclosed. Now, if it was an economic development deal that they publicly disclosed that somehow got out well before decisions were made, it could result in that company moving on to somewhere else. And there's no way really to get around that or to somehow punish that unless it's very close to election time and the voters decide within that person's district that, yeah, maybe they're not the most appropriate person to be sitting in that council seat. A lot of times it's going to come down to that.
What exactly censure look like to a government body?
Basically, it would be one member of council making a motion to censor
In
another
public,
one
yes.
in public. It's done during a meeting. Majority of council just has to approve it, and if that happens, then they are publicly censured.
Which literally means nothing.
Depends on where you are. If you're in a small county, that there's not a whole lot of newspaper coverage, probably doesn't mean a lot. But when you've got someone like Beaufort County where the Island Packet is pretty active, then it can actually carry some weight because it'll appear in print. And it has happened. I guess now it's 2025. It's more than 15 years ago, there was another county that they had an active newspaper. And there was majority of council despised each other. They would actively fight and threaten each other in council meetings to the point where deputies had to escort people to their cars to protect them. Their newspaper just, I knew when their council met, I knew I'd be able to open the paper the next day and just read everything that went on in that meeting. And unfortunately for that county, they're one of the few counties that they don't stagger their council seats. The entire council was up for re-election that year, and all but one member was replaced. So newspapers still have their power.
Oh, yeah, in this county they do.
I know, I read the Island Packet almost daily.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Glover? Is that, because I don't know what specifically you were asking for executive
Yeah,
session?
he's fine. He's
You're
fine.
good?
It was more for clarification
Yes.
in my mind than anything else
Yeah.
and stuff, that's all.
But, yeah, best practice is, as an individual council member, don't disclose anything you discuss in executive session until it becomes public.
Can we, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr.
Say that again?
The best practice is, you as an individual shouldn't disclose anything that's discussed in executive session until it becomes public.
What's the best practice with, so we talked about that. What about emails? Now, if they're from the attorney, we get it, they mark it confidential attorney-client privilege, or we assume it's attorney-client privilege. What about disclosing, like I decide I'm in a spat with Alice and I want to put her email out to my constituents? Other than not being a good member of the team, what do you suggest on that?
That's up to you, because at that point, if it's just two members of council
Yeah, it goes to
emailing back and
everybody.
forth. Now, I would be very careful sending emails to the entire council,
That's where I was going.
other
next.
than the kind of thing that you normally send out when it relates to meetings, agenda packets, things like that. Because remember, anything you do, if it is a majority or a quorum of this council, that becomes a public meeting. If it has any discussion of county business. So let's kind of get back to your relationship with elected county officials, because this is an issue that this happens in all 46 counties. as a council, you are statutorily required to provide certain things to the elected officials at the county level. That's your auditor, your treasurer, your sheriff, probate judge, all of those. You have to, at a minimum, provide them office space, the materials to run that office, and sufficient staff to run that office. As a council, you cannot modify, prohibit, or usurp any of the statutory duties that elected official is provided for within the applicable section of the law that created that office. Now, there are times where an elected official can agree to give up authority over something to county council, such as if under law, the sheriff is statutorily provided the authority to run the county detention center. However, in certain counties, the sheriff has transferred that authority over to county council. Once they do that, they can't unilaterally take it back. County council has to agree to give it up because that becomes a duty of county council. And that has become an issue in a couple of counties. And once an official gives up formally an authority, it has to be transferred back by the same way, by the same agreement. However, whenever you talk about your authority and your limitations on elected officials, you as council, you still retain your full budgetary authority over the county finances. That means you have to approve their budget. You have to provide them the money that they need to run that office. But that does not mean they have the authority to dictate to you exactly what they have to run that office. And I think this is one of the areas where you need kind of the expert advice on how to structure the wording of your budget ordinance as to how much control you give to the elected officials. Because if you just give them a pot of money and said, this is your pot to run your office, that gives them a little bit of leeway to do with that money the way they want. However, if in your budget ordinance you say you have X amount for personnel, X amount for equipment, X amount for office space, that kind of puts a limit on that official to be able to use that money the way your budget ordinance says. Yes.
I had a question regarding procurement. Elected officials have, is it county by county that they have to follow the county's procurement regulations, or is there any statewide statute that says they have to follow procurement procedures?
Yes and no.
Okay.
The general state law just says that counties have to adopt an appropriate policy for procurement for the county. What the Attorney General has generally said, and it has never really been tested by the appellate courts, is that because the statute says that you have to provide that procurement policy for the county, that means that your county officials, including your elected officials that are outside administrative authority, they have to follow at least that general procurement policy. That means your sheriff, your auditor, your treasurer generally has to follow the county's procurement policy.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
And then finally, when it comes to budgetary authority, that includes the right to audit any elected official, any appointed official, when it comes to funds that are provided by the county. And that also comes from another case that's in your packet called Brown versus Berkeley County. There have been a line of cases that have said that you as council, you have the authority to audit any funds that you provide as part of your budgetary authority in your budget ordinances. And that includes what the courts have said, that includes the solicitor, even though the solicitor is elected over a circuit rather than an individual county, but only to the extent of the funds that you provide that office. It would not, for example, what the court said is, it would not include the solicitor's intervention program funds if that comes from multiple counties or comes from a different pot of money other than what the county council
Or if they
gives
got
them.
grant money from other sources.
Yes.
You talked about line item budget when you're appropriating funds. One of the statute or the state says that if you give the elected official $100, you cannot cut that budget from $100 annually. Now, if there's special projects, then, if you fund that, then that may not be in next year's budget because it's a special project. And that's fine, as far as I understand. But suppose you funding an elected official over a period of time in a particular department, and they all of a sudden eliminate that. Should that be subject to a budgetary reduction as well? And sometimes you may not know how to handle that sort of thing as a county official.
And that's an issue that comes up regularly, is when it comes to the overall budget appropriation for an office, there are ways that you can reduce a budget if we went into another recession the way that we did in the mid-2000s, where you saw home values along the coast, especially here, where they dropped by half. That means your tax revenue was going to drop by half.
Yeah.
If you have to create or implement a program of line item reductions, that can include elected officials' offices, but what the Attorney General's opinions and the courts have said is that you cannot reduce the budget beyond a level that causes that office not to function efficiently. But I will tell you what the Attorney General has also said with that is it's going to be up to that official to prove to the circuit court that the budget has been reduced too low. Where the state law comes into with prohibiting reductions is in the actual elected official's salary. If at the beginning of the term, say you elect a new treasurer, if the salary is set at $50,000, you can't reduce that below $50,000 during that official's term of office, for that 4 years that they're in office. You can increase it. Say if you increased it $2,000 each budget year, you can do that. You just can't reduce it during the term of office. You can only reduce a salary of an elected official at the start of a new term. Okay, so I'm in a little bit less than an hour, so let's talk about just some common issues that are common to every county. As a county council, you are a legislative body, and so you have legislative immunity in tort under the South Carolina Tort Claims Act. And that provides you immunity so long as your actions are in furtherance of the course and scope of your role as council and done as a body as a whole. That means if you pass an ordinance that someone then files a lawsuit saying that it hurt the value of their property, they can't sue you as a legislative act, because the legislative act is for the common good, not for as an individual, and therefore you have legislative immunity. Just know that legislative immunity is not absolute. It is a defense under the Tort Claims Act, and it has to be pled. There are consequences, however, for acting outside the course and scope of your legislative authority, or you're acting personally outside the course and scope as a member of the county council. In that case, you actually can lose legislative immunity and be subject to personal liability. And that was tested many years ago in an Horry County case called Cricket Cove versus Galand. This is where a member of county council made a lot of statements about a developer outside of county council meetings, to the press, to individuals. It led to the council denying a development request, and the developer ended up suing not only the county for the denial of the development request, but also sued the county council member individually, saying that this was not part of a legislative action, that this was a personal defamation. That case ended up being settled after it went to the appellate courts, and so I never found out what happened to the council member individually, but the Supreme Court remanded it back to the circuit court to determine whether those actions were legislative or were personal. There is also federal tort law immunity for legislative bodies, and that is in those cases where an individual files a 1983 action. That's under federal law, under 28 U.S.C. section 1983. An individual can file a federal action against an individual for a violation of a protected civil or constitutional right under color of law. And that means you are named individually rather than the county. And generally, they can't come after council as a whole. They have to go after an individual. It is very rare for 1983 actions to be filed against legislative bodies. Most of the time, you'll hear them being filed against other officials, like your sheriff, for excessive use of force cases against deputies. The issue with those is, again, not only is it an individual action filed against you, unlike the Tort Claims Act, where you have limitations of awards of $300,000 for a claim and for a total of $600,000 for an occurrence, there are no limits to the award, and you can award punitive damages. That's why you always hear in the news for these excessive force cases, $10, $20, $30 million verdicts against governmental, either individuals or governmental bodies. And the last thing I want to leave you with is...
I had one
Yes.
question. In the Horry County case, did the council member make those statements like to the press publicly outside the venue
Yes.
of county council meetings?
Yeah. There were a combination of, there were statements made during county
Right.
city county council meetings, but then also statements to individuals in the press outside of those.
The person's role as county council?
Yeah.
Are they protected in county council meeting?
If it's in a county council meeting, in a public session, unless it's defamatory, I mean, if it's the truth, of course, if it's, it can be protected.
Okay.
Because it's going to be part of a legislative discussion. But again, if it's defamatory, then court could very well say that's outside the course and scope of a legislative act.
Okay.
Let me leave you with one last thing is, under FOIA, there is no legislative work product protection for anyone other than the General Assembly. So if you're sending emails from constituents to you, from you to constituents, to you to the press, if you are sending emails back and forth to each other and to the administrator, all of those can be requested by individuals. And I think those have been requested in the past. And you see that you can't deny disclosure of those. So you want to be very careful of how you are wording things in emails or statements you make to individuals in the press. Make sure that you are careful in your wording. And if you get a press inquiry of something, run that by your chair, your vice chair, your administrator, your county attorney. Make sure that what you're saying is what the public has already heard, and it's not something that's confidential at this point.
What about texts on your county phone that you get from texts that you might, texts that you might get
Yes.
on your county phone?
If it's on your county phone, I think it's fair game.
Okay.
Should be.
That also brings up something that I know Kent always talks about this when he's doing FOIA presentations. If you are conducting county business, make sure you're not doing it on your personal phone, because it hasn't been tested, but it will be someday. If you've got a public official or a public body using personal devices, somebody somewhere is going to request that. And you may have to turn over your device for inspection, even if it contains personal information. It may have to be done in camera by a judge to decide what's public and what's private. You don't want to have to go through that. That's why we always recommend have as council member, when you're first elected, create email addresses for your council district that constituents can use, that you can use to conduct county business. Don't use a personal email. Have a official device that you use rather than a personal. Okay, so let me leave you with a couple of publications that we have and some other resources. You know, we have the Home Rule Handbook that we do, and we have an annual update that we do every year. All of these are going to be available on our website. The Handbook for County Government in South Carolina. We also have the Model Rules of Parliamentary Procedure and the Freedom of Information Act Manual and the annual update. I will tell you that the Handbook for County Government and the Model Rules of Parliamentary Procedure, both of those are currently either being updated currently or we're getting ready to start with the Model Rules. Because the last update we did to Model Rules was 2017, and I think the Handbook for County Government was last updated in 2013. But the other two, the Home Rule and the FOIA manuals, we have annual updates that we do every year. And I will leave you with the fact that the Institute of Government will be held next February 20th in Columbia to coincide with the Counties Connect Legislative Conference on the 19th. And I know if any of y'all heard or were at the orientation for new council members, I said that we were going to do managing and conducting meetings in February, but because of the unavailability of the co-instructor on that one, we are holding that one off until the Summer Institute in Charleston. So we're going to do the Level 1 Legal Issues course in February. And I think and information on those are going to be going out in the next couple of weeks. So I know we're going to be offering 2 or 3 other classes in the Institute along with the legislative conference itself. And then the next time we'll be doing the Institute will be at the annual conference in the Institute in first week of August.
Well, thank you very much, and let's open it up. Any more questions, last-minute questions? Anybody have?
I have
Yeah,
one.
okay. Go ahead, Paul, and then Brian.
Back to the executive session, you said economic development, trade secrets, legal issues, personnel issues. You didn't mention contracts, or did you mention contracts?
Contracts, yes.
Oh, contract, you did, okay, thank you.
All right.
Can you tell us what the best practice across the state is as far as when council appoints their standing committees, and they assign members to those committees? Do any other counties allow members not assigned to that committee to participate in the discussion and then to vote on the topics at that committee?
I can't tell you if there is a one particular way that that's done. Is I would say that if there are members of council that aren't assigned to a committee, they are certainly invited. They can attend any of those, because committees, just like council, those are public meetings. So the public has to be invited. So that means any member of council can also attend those. As far as voting, I would say probably the vote should be limited to members of the council, to that committee or that subcommittee.
Well, if your rule says differently,
Yeah, if your rules say differently.
gotcha.
Because again, that goes back to the Home Rule Act and 491-110. You have the authority to adopt any rule that doesn't conflict with state law.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Deloach? Well, we really appreciate your time, and we're going to adjourn for 10 minutes in case for a break, and then if you can hang around for
Sure.
10 more minutes in case anybody has some one-on-one questions, that can happen then too.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
We
Thank you, John.
appreciate it.
Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Thanks. Okay, so we've got a 10-minute break. It's 10:13, 10:23. We'll come back. open discussion, and we're going to start with number 7, which is discussion of revised format of council committees, agencies, boards, and commission liaisons, and external liaison preferences. So we've got things that we need all of county council to put their preferences on a piece of paper. And earlier this week, Tab and I had an opportunity to meet with Mike Moore and Sarah Brock regarding the administrative aspects of how we do county council business. We don't have a lot of different changes, but we just want to present a few items today for possible discussion and adoption. If there's a consensus without a vote, this is a workshop, we can talk about it openly and see what you think. Some of these things are, and Logan's on too, thank you, Logan. Some of these things we've done in the past, and it's not like we're going in reverse, we just got some ideas on different ways to do things. It's also time to get your choices on what committees that you want to serve on. One major suggestion that we can do immediately is I'd like to, and Tab and Mr. Moore and Sarah and I talked about it, split community services from land use and possibly revert the name of land use back to natural resources, which has been the name of it for a very long time. Community service was a separate committee for many years. That would make us have 4 committees with 4 chairs and 4 vice chairs. Public facilities, finance, community services, and natural resources. And I'll just like to hear any discussion of that or ideas. I know many of us that were on council remember when we had it split. There's advantages and disadvantages to that. It's an important committee. Oh, which one? Pass out.
This one here.
Yeah, we'll pass this out so you can see visually what we're talking about and when they would meet. Mr. Moore is okay, and I think his staff has been apprised of possible change. So, any
I have
comments?
a question, Madam Chair, and that is natural resources, it was land use, so it would remain,
It's had the same responsibilities, just change the
that's
name.
my question. All right,
Right.
thank you.
They're in the book.
They're in the book, by the way. We had Sarah, and these can be revised, but she included the description of the Natural Resource Committee. It's at the blue tab. Public Facilities Committee, mission statement and what responsibilities they have. Finance Administration and Economic Development and what responsibilities they have. And then we used to have an executive committee which would only meet when necessary, and that would be for revisions of like policy. It would be the chairmans of each of the standing committees, so it'd be a committee of 4. Anyone have any strong feelings one way or the other about that kind of change?
You said a committee of 4 for the executive committee?
Right, anyone could attend.
Is that the assumption that
That we would do the 4 committees
That
instead of
the-
3.
that the chairman and the vice chair is serving as one of the chairmen of these other committees?
No, it'd be
No.
in addition.
Okay, so then you would have an executive committee of 6?
Yes, you're right, you're correct. It'd be 6 people on it, the 4 chairmen and the
So that's-
chairman and the
that-
vice chair.
okay.
Yeah, that would be a quorum. Mhm. Yeah. We don't have, I mean,
That's dangerous, huh?
well, do you like the idea of having an executive committee or not, or?
Well, I'm just saying, that, you're talking about executive committee, then you're bringing in 6 members of council, which is the majority of council in your executive committee, blah, blah, blah. So it's always going to be subject to the public anyway.
And it would be public meetings.
But I would think that in executive session or executive committee, you want to deal with certain particular issues. But,
And it
I'm
wouldn't
just
be
saying
an
that-
executive session at
Huh?
all. It wouldn't be an executive session.
No, I understand that.
Right.
I'm just noting that is a committee of 6, that's all.
All right. It would be a large committee.
But it's in public session. It's not executive session.
If I could add something, Jim?
Yes, sir.
You could make yourself an ex-official member, like on all the other committees, and you wouldn't count towards.
That's true.
quorum, so
That's
you could
good.
get 5 with ex-officials.
So it'd still be 5?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, I like that. That'd be good. A good point. Okay.
But if you're the executive committee, you want to be the chair. I mean, the chair want to be in charge of that, wouldn't it? I think.
Well,
But,
I could be ex officio, and the vice chair could be chair of that
so
committee.
executive committee be run by the vice chair. I
Could be
got you.
that
I'm
way.
just, it's talking through.
It's good questions.
That would work, as to Mr. Herbert's suggestion. Okay, we'll think that way.
You say the first Monday of the month, not the second Monday?
Would be the Community Services Committee,
And the first
And
Monday?
National
For
Resources.
the national, first Monday?
right.
Not it wouldn't be before the council meeting, the second Monday, like it is now?
The proposal is the committees meet the first and third Mondays at 2 and 4, and then you're done, and council meets the second and fourth
Oh, okay, so we're not
Mondays.
going to, okay.
So it won't interfere with,
That's our proposal. We're
Oh.
also proposing that executive session, not committee, be held prior to the council meeting. That way the public doesn't have to sit while we're 2 hours behind closed doors. The council meeting would start at 6.
I was going to get to
executive session
that.
would be
Yeah,
5.
I was going to get to that. That was, I think does anyone have strong feelings about having 4 committees? Not counting executive committee. You good with that? Okay, now we can go.
Anything?
Anything? Next, we are suggesting that only the committee members vote. It used to be that way on county council. That way, if you're not a committee member and Logan, do you have any comments on the first thing we talked about? About 4 committees? I'm sorry.
No, I'm okay with the 4 committees, and I'm okay with bunching up the dates as well. That doesn't bother me at all. As long as we have it to some type of set schedule for those of us, obviously, that have to change the times a little bit, that's all I ask.
And there may be times that community services might not need to meet, and they wouldn't have to if they didn't have business to do. Or there's usually always business for natural resources, though. But there could be some time it wouldn't. The other thing we're talking about, that only committee members vote, but any council member could attend a committee meeting and participate in the discussions at committee meetings. That used to be that way in the past. It also kind of frees up people that aren't on the committee, if they can't make it because they're busy people, they can wait till council meeting, or they can watch it on TV, participate that way. But that way, we would only have voting members who are actual members of the committee.
Oh, and we evidently, for veteran members, you used to hold committee meetings in the ECR, so you were sitting around a table talking to each other. They're still open to the public, there's plenty of seating, and so our proposal is to move committee meetings into the ECR. They're still videoed, they're still public. Evidently, public used to sit around behind you, but this way, council is conducting the meeting, face-to-face instead of up there. I know it's a lot to throw at you.
Any comments about that?
No, I
If
think
we-
that's a good idea.
If we knew, for instance, there was something controversial, we could change it to the main room if we thought we were going to need a lot of seats.
As long as it's public, it's good.
So everybody agreed to the 4 committees, let's go there first.
I agree with that.
Logan was good? Okay,
Oh, Brian's, okay.
so they have to fill this
I'm
sheet
okay
out.
with the room option too, as long as we do have something that's gonna have either a lot of speakers or a lot of people interested, that we do have the option to still bring it into the room.
Sure.
And to your point, Public Facilities Committee sometimes has a lot of people, and so would Natural Resources, but maybe the others not so much. During budget time, we might have a lot of people for finance, a lot of visitors for that one. We'll just have to,
Yeah, I just don't want to tell people no, they can't come in the room. That's
oh, no, we wouldn't, no, we don't want to do that. And we can switch them quickly if we have a crowd show up.
Alice, that's one thing that I think you can try it and see what happens, but you're going to find out, obviously, you've been around as long as I have, that room gets very small and very claustrophobic, even just with the committee and the staff that's in there. And you really have no seats left then for any public at all when you do that. So I think I understand what we're trying to do, and again, I'm not opposed to that, but I just think that room is not large enough to handle. There's no way you can get this many people in there right now.
It's probably just finance, that's all.
Nice dig, Mr. Oliver.
Yeah, I wish. But yeah, I mean, give it a try, see what happens. But again, I think you are going to push the limits, especially with people's fears after COVID. It's going to be even more.
And that's, yeah, excellent point. I'm sure that was part of the reasoning moving them out here too, to give space to everyone. We'll see how, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We'll change it back for sure. All right.
Could we talk about the voting
Sure.
committee members?
We've done it both ways since many of us have been on
Right,
council.
So what are the pros and cons about all members who attend the committee meeting would have the right to vote versus just committee members and stuff? What's the pros and cons on that? Because I've been at it both ways and stuff. When I first came on, it was just only members of the committee, then eventually changed to all members, and that was for a reason. So I'm not too sure why it was changed, so we're changing it back. So what is the issue here?
Tab will handle that one because she's gotten feedback that I haven't had.
I attend every committee meeting, literally, if I can make it. And what happens is.
We all do.
Yeah,
Right,
and you
okay,
do.
yeah,
and
yeah.
So what happens is you then have a quorum for council, and sometimes you have most of council there. So it's literally a council meeting if everyone's allowed to vote. And I believe in attending committee meetings, and I thought Mr. Lawson even brought up, it's good knowledge. That's where all the work is done in committee, right?
Right.
But we were talking about just the members should vote. I guess you all used to do it. We asked the administrator. It's done that way in other counties. In fact, we looked at other county agendas. You will see that some of them only list the members of the committee as present. They don't. The rest of them are persona non grata per se for that committee meeting. That's why you're on a committee. But I see it both ways like you do, Mr. Glover, as a person who attended them all. And I had asked our previous attorney, should I vote or not vote? Because I'm not on the committee.
Right.
And I was told I could vote. So, I don't know.
It was done previously where only committee members were allowed to vote.
Right.
And then we changed. Generally, I don't know, I can't speak one way or the other. I think maybe Gerald and Alice, who've been here long enough, can tell you whether there is a difference in the approach, whether you have all members of the committee who attend voting versus just only committee members and stuff.
In some ways, I think it put the onus on the committee members to be there because they knew they had to have a quorum when it wasn't everybody. But then also, with county council members who work, who aren't on a committee, they can watch the committee meeting later, or they could feel like they didn't physically have to be at the meeting.
What impact does it have on the result, I guess,
the
is
result?
my question. Does it make a difference whether everybody who's there voted?
Or not.
Right, or when you have only committee members there voting and it's brought to full council to be voted on, was there, a major difference? I don't know.
The only difference I see is that if, in the executive room, in the committee meetings, if all of the council members that are present are allowed to vote, then you have that discussion there at the committee level. If if they're not on the committee, but they're present but not allowed to vote, then we bring it out here, then the discussion that would have taken place in the committee level is now taking place out here. So I see the pros and the cons that work both ways. The discussions that would have taken place in the committee level, if everybody had the opportunity to vote, then when it comes out to the full council, then you already had that discussion, so now you're not losing time discussing it again. If the committee members, if the members who are not on the committee, present at the committee level, doesn't have the opportunity to vote, then when we come out here, they're going to have that discussion all over again, which we already had in the committee level, and then vote appropriately according to their wishes.
And
I'm going to piggyback on what Gerald just said.
Yes.
Now, if you're in a committee meeting and it's only allowed the members on that committee to vote, make a recommendation, to do amendments, et cetera, and if that is not done, you bring it to the full body, then that body now becomes subject to making amendments to that same motion that could have been handled in the committee session before we got to the major body. So you're going to spend more time here discussing that issue versus, and it'll go back to the committee to come back forward and stuff. So I don't know. I'm just asking the question.
the committee meetings are held, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock.
Because you want to be efficient.
Right. Yeah, it's, how many members of the public come to committee meetings in general? That's because of the time of them. They're 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock.
Right.
And that's the only advantage I see, is that more, the committee level, the public still has an opportunity to see more discussion at a regular council meeting. There have been a few times when things were sent back to committee, but not often.
And to piggyback on that, my residents say, you guys just rubber stamp everything at a council meeting, because they don't watch committee meetings. They don't know we dig in at committee meetings. So there's a pro and a con, like Gerald said.
I got you.
But Sarah read my mind. She put up our handbook, and there it is in Part B. It says non-committee members may enter discussion and may have a vote. That's what I was doing for 2 years. Anybody can vote in committee meeting, and many of us attend. You might have 7 people here for a committee meeting.
Oh, we've had the full council almost, and some of them.
So that's in our handbook right now, and if we opt not to change it, that stands. They get to vote in committee meetings.
We wanted to hear if there was any
Mr.
will to change it or not.
And obviously I've been here, I've seen both, just like I think y'all have as well, and there is no right or wrong. However, I know just what Gerald said, and then Mr. Glover came in right on top of that, is the fact that whenever we didn't let people vote in the committee meetings, our council meetings then were much longer, more contentious. There was more things that were brought up, and again, there was more changes to a first reading because of that. And again, there were more arguments and tension that occurred. So, again, there's no right or wrong. I can see why you want to do either way, but I'm just letting you know what my observation was, which is very similar to what Mr. Dawson, Mr. Glover's was.
Consent agenda.
It's 3.
Right. And,
Alice,
Mr.,
I don't know if you guys can see me on there, but
well, we can hear you, and then I'll
can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I do remember when we first did this, it was just committee members. But I also remember because of that, a lot of people didn't show up and we were having problems getting quorums. I remember getting texts like, hey, can you get on? We're short to get a committee to a quorum. So I could see that being an issue. I don't have a problem. I know that it used to be you show up to the committee that you're on, that's when you're obligated to come to. I don't mind if that we put that rhetoric back out there, but I feel like if a council member does show up to a meeting and can, that they should have the right to be able to be in that discussion and have a say in the vote. But with that said, I guess one of the other issues that I run into is how many things can we pass in committee that don't have to go through county council? So if something can go through committee, then the rest of us have to go by it and honor it, that we should at least be able to have the opinion to say something yes or no on that. So maybe it's a hybrid, I don't know, but I just know that gray area is there.
Joe brought up a good point. We'll have less items probably on the consent agenda, because if we don't have committee, everyone can vote, we get more consensus that way. What about Logan's legal question, Brian? What can be, it's a dollar amount, what can be approved at the committee level, correct?
Currently, council can approve $200,000.
At the committee level? Mhm.
But I think that's something that should be discussed. I'll give you an example. You get 5 members on the committee, okay? You get a quorum of 3 members showing up. So 2 members of the 3 vote for something to occur. Is that fair for 2 members of council?
Make the decision for all of county council?
Or should it come to the full council for consideration and action?
Okay.
Something to think about.
That's what you were saying, Logan. Did you hear it, Brian?
Yes.
Okay. If I'm hearing, the consensus is leave it as it is in the handbook for now. Anybody?
Anybody, Paula, Tom? I got
Anybody?
these.
No, that makes sense, to leave it as
Leave
it
it
is.
like
The
it is?
handbook for now.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And
Okay.
it's going to be 4 or 5 people on the committee?
Have
5?
five,
Joe, what was your consensus
so
on
we
that?
always
5,
have.
okay.
Yeah, because
Leave
you're
it.
now going to elongate a council meeting that starts late now. Usually, we try and keep a council meeting to 2 hours. You're now looking at minimum of 3.
Okay, all right, well, we'll leave it like the handbook is. That's why we wanted to hear from everybody. There,
Brian brings up, so you're saying when it's financial,
Or anything.
anything,
Do you really want a committee making a final action for all of council? when
Which is
it's a
2.
small part of council, potentially. Potentially, 2 members of council could take an action that binds council and the government.
that's what happened with our ATAX committee.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
And if somebody has to recuse themselves,
then you're in trouble too.
now you're in trouble again.
But just something to think about as far as what authority do you want the committees to have as far as taking action that binds the county?
Okay, I've got a couple more things, and then Tab's got some things to bring up too. You've seen this list. We need you to mark if you want to be a member, do you want to be chairman, you want to be vice chairman, what's your choices? And this has got to be done quickly because we're splitting. We don't have to change the handbook to split community services from natural resources, but Monday, the 13th, is a meeting. So we've got to make those, we've got to have that ready to go for Monday. So there's 2 other lists that you have besides this committee list to make up what you want to do. We have the list for liaisons to the county boards and commissions. A lot of people, we need a lot of people to volunteer to do that. It doesn't mean we want you to be able to report back what those boards and commissions are doing. And then we also have liaison choices for outside groups, such as, I'll use TCL and USCB. We have, what's the rest of them? There's a list of
under
them.
each, yeah.
It's under there. And if you're interested or not interested, and please don't hesitate to put, you can, some of these you can take turns even, if you don't want to be the sole liaison to it. We can be kind of flexible about that with alternates, but try to pick out, if you're really not interested in something, check it. But if you're interested at all, please check it. Now, the Northern Regional County Regional Plan Group, Implementation Group, we have by right 4 representatives to that, so all 4 of us that live north of the Broad will be on that one.
And LOCOG.
And LOCOG, we have by right. Gerald, do you know how many by right we have on that one?
We have 5, I think. don't we?
5? So we need 5 people on that one, too. So, okay.
Hey, Alice.
Yes, Logan?
Now that we're going to 4 committees, I remember when we first had 4 committees, we used to try to, if the council member wanted to, pair up their committees so that they're both on the same day. Do we have which committees are going to be on which day together? Because I'll be honest, I would
Doesn't
like
have
to-
that.
Oh, that's right, you don't have the handout. Okay. First Monday will be Community Services and Natural Resources. Third Monday would be Finance at 2, and Public Facilities at 4.
So people might want to pair up which one, like Logan's saying.
Say community service and natural resources.
Now, keep in mind that these county board listings, anybody can go to any of these meetings. It just means you would be the primary, as I like the term, belly button person for that county board meeting. Like, I go to Keep Beaufort Beautiful, but Paul is the liaison to that, just for instance. But anybody can go to any of them on any time they meet. So, agenda format, we not.
Before you go there,
Yes, sir.
on the external
External?
liaison, yes. I used to be the liaison for the public defender office, but it's not on here.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know whether there was a
coroner,
liaison for the solicitor's office, but I'm not interested in that, but I.
But you think, public defender, we need to put that one?
Yeah, I did, and I
Okay.
just sort of wrote it in.
That's good.
And just checked it off, as an interest, but,
Okay.
yeah.
Definitely, yes. Okay,
Okay.
I added, we'll do that. Any other changes to that, additions to the external ones?
On the county website, it says, like, some people are liaison to the sheriff, coroner, and solicitor. Yeah, you can,
I don't know, did we do that?
no.
I don't know.
I don't think so,
I don't
not
think
since
so.
I've been here.
That's why we didn't put them on, but
Okay.
if you think we need to.
No.
I don't see the Palmetto Breeze on there, is that?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's Low Country
Let me
Transit,
see.
Oh, Low Country Transit, yeah.
LRTA.
Thank you.
Well, but, okay, I got you. Does that include Palmetto Breeze?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I forgot, yeah. And it's real important, Palmetto Breeze, they're doing a lot of work right now, and they've got a lot of things going on with Palmetto Breeze.
Sure do.
All right, okay, I have one more thing. Agenda format, we just changed it slightly, is what we'd like to do, and see what y'all think about that, is putting public comments all at the beginning of the meeting. That way, people don't have to wait. So it'd be a general public comments, doesn't have to be by agenda item, and it would be a total of 30 minutes, is what we're thinking, at maximum.
Yeah.
What happens if somebody
That's 10
don't make
people?
the first session of the public comment, and at the end of the meeting, they want to
If they're
stay?
late for the meeting, or they don't get here in time?
Or they don't make the first 30 minutes of the meeting. And so they sit in the audience waiting for us to get to the point where they have an opportunity to speak before this meeting ends.
We're going to start at 6 instead of 5.
I understand, but still,
Well, they'll see the agenda has only one public comments. That's very common across counties. I mean, I dug into a lot of county agendas. And what was confusing to some people, I think, with our agenda is if you're not speaking on an item of the agenda, you didn't speak in the first 15 minutes, then you had to wait to the last 15. Most of the ones I looked at put them all in the beginning, 30 minutes, and that's it.
So,
But there is a school board member of mine that will show up at the end because he has maybe another meeting or whatever and stuff, and I think people are working. So the question is, do we allow for people like that who cannot make a 6 o'clock meeting because of work schedule or whatever to be able to address us? I think that's.
What if we put more time at the?
The only problem with
Maybe
both
just
times on
less
it is
minutes at the
that
end.
folks will abuse it.
Oh, yeah.
That may be here. So I don't know how you get around that, that's all. I don't think you want to if you put both times in there for public comment, then people who may have been here all day and spoke at the beginning is going to take the opportunity to speak at the end as well. I don't think you want
Sure.
to necessarily allow that to take place
Yeah.
unless you limit the amount of time for the public meeting at the end to
Be less than what we had at the beginning?
less at the beginning.
What
Just
would
to
you-
give people who may,
What would,
Chairman,
for
can I?
whatever reason, I like the beginning part of it, because if you have somebody from the Fusky or whatever and stuff,
Right.
But they got to go
Yeah.
home.
yeah, they got to get home. I like that part, and I
Right.
like giving more time in the beginning, but I think if you do put something there at the end, you may get the abuse, and I don't think you want that.
Unless it was just a small amount of time.
Or if we just say, if you've already spoken, this is for people that didn't have the opportunity. I'm all for public comment because that's our job.
Yeah.
But the question is, like the school district does too, some of the other,
Right.
then you go forever if you do 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah, you'll be there all day.
But
Be there all
we
night.
liked putting in the beginning so
Right.
that people
And I
that
agree with
want to
that.
go.
I agree, I understand, I got that. I'm just dealing with the
When-
latecomers.
Just a brief
Let me let
comment.
Tom go, and then you, Logan.
Oh, Logan,
Okay.
sorry, Logan.
Oh, go ahead, Tom.
When the vice chair started the discussion, we talked about accommodating the people that we serve. Whether they want to do it at the beginning or the end, we accommodate that. Do we set up time at the beginning and end? I think it makes sense that, like York is saying, that if somebody doesn't show up, just have it, but we wanted to accommodate the
Doesn't have
people.
to be an agenda item.
Yeah, sure.
All right, Logan, what were you going to say? Logan, go ahead.
Yeah, I look at it, we also have the option that somebody can make a recommendation and add it if we don't get all the way through. I mean, if we have a list of people,
Makes
and
sense.
30 minutes doesn't get us through the entire list of people, or somebody comes in late, that could always be made. The comment could be made, especially if it's that type of meeting where we know we have a lot of people that want to speak.
If the room's full.
Like Mr. Dawson said, I completely understand the logic behind it. You could easily make the motion to add it to the agenda towards the end of the meeting, we could use a supermajority to approve it.
What do they do in York County? I'm just asking.
Yeah, and what they would typically do there is they would have 30 minutes up front, but the chair would make a point to say, if you have comments during public hearing, they would request that those be held, and then in public hearing, they could make whatever comments. And then-
About that particular item.
Right, so you didn't have people at the beginning talking about something that could be discussed in a public hearing.
Sure.
Which then cuts into, if somebody may want to speak to a non-public hearing item or non-agenda. And then what they did at the end is if somebody in particular wanted to come and make a presentation, they would reach out. It generally went through the clerk's office, and it would come to the chair, and the chair would make a special provision to have a citizen make a comment at the end.
At the end, it
At
could
the
be
end.
added.
But it would be scheduled, and it would be by name of this individual, whether it be a community group or, so that's how York County did it. But they did have they also had 2 minutes instead of 3, so they could get more speakers in. So that's something to consider as well.
2 minutes, wow. Yeah.
But it's a short amount of time.
It
But those
is.
that's what they did there, but it was limited to 30 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So the other
Paul,
proposal, just so they know,
We'll let Paul.
well, I want to pick.
I agree with Logan. Have the first 30 minutes, 3 minutes each, and they can speak about anything they want. Because a lot of people, since our meetings are starting at 6 o'clock, I can't tell you how many people have contacted me and said, that is wonderful. Finally, you guys are going to do that. They get off work at 5, they get over here by 6, they speak their mind, and they leave. They don't want to sit through the entire
I understand that, yeah.
until 9 o'clock that night. So I think the first idea was the right one.
That was our impetus to move it, but piggybacking on Mr. Moore, the other thing is, the suggestion is we do third reading, public hearing, those items first. So if somebody wants to talk about Defusky and it's a third reading, they can do it up on, right now they're interspersed here and there, so some people had to wait till item 17 to speak. If it's a third reading, public hearing, they would speak there, which means they don't have to speak in the public 30 minutes. Then we'd have second reading, public hearing, and they speak there, and then you go to first reading and the rest of the agenda. And we found that many counties do that out of courtesy to the residents. Because right now, we have people hanging around for number 17, I remember, and they had to wait and wait and wait till we got to the third reading, public hearing.
Is that, if you got to have a public hearing after a first or second reading legally, do you have to have that hearing right then, or can you do it before the meetings?
No, she's talking about having the public hearing during the agenda item discussion, just like we do, just organizing that at the top of the agenda is how I understood it.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
My recommendation would be not to try to have a public hearing at the third reading of an ordinance, because if there is input from the public that changes something, you have to bring it back. I would encourage you to consider having public hearings at the first or second reading, to where if there's changes, you can
We can
make
send
those
it back.
changes and still have it passed within the normal 3 readings.
So my question is really, when do you have that first and second reading? During the time of the ordinance coming before us for the motion, or do you do it at the public?
The citizen comment period is separate from the agenda item.
Separate.
They're talking about the public hearing, the way you currently do it, having the public hearing, and then just moving that to the top of that list of third reading or second reading, first
Do
reading.
you have an
So
example?
the public comment, the citizen comment, and the public comments for items not on the agenda items would still remain where they are.
Sarah's going to see if she can bring up an
And the chair
example.
would say that, public comment, if you're here for the hearings, you'll have the opportunity, this would be for others.
Right, so, and
Gotcha.
Joe did that too, so that people understood that, you're going to get to talk about your particular item for public hearing, and then allow that other time for other people during the 30 minutes. And we could, if someone shows up after 6 o'clock, after 6:30, and they didn't get to make public comment, that's another option.
Make an exception.
Exception. Yeah, we could offer it at the end.
Yeah, make an
But
exception.
that's based
Exception.
on the chair suggestion,
We'd have to
making that
allow it.
announcement or whatever. I like what Tab said earlier, was that if you spoke at the first public hearing,
You can't.
speak at
No, no.
the second, so you open it up
To other people.
Other
to other
people.
people, but it's noted on the agenda that there's another public hearing, and you may put in parentheses, only for folks who hadn't spoken yet.
We'll have to think about how much time we want at the end.
That's right.
We don't, we want another
short order.
30 minutes at the end? I don't know.
15
No.
at the most, 10
How many?
minutes.
10?
Well,
Or
just-
9?
yeah.
Or 10? Say 10?
Hopefully you only have maybe 2 or 3 people and,
Hopefully, yeah.
at
Yeah,
the
we could
end.
we could do that.
But I
Okay,
think if you
y'all can
have-
see this up here,
That's the
this,
structure y'all were discussing.
this goes to about the ordinance second hearing
Third reading.
and third reading. And I think to Brian's point, I remember during Green Space, we had a lot of changes between second reading and third reading.
And the referendum.
In the referendum, we did
So
too.
I would encourage you to go early. But remember, the people that want to speak have to sign up with the clerk. So you can always, at the end of the meeting, check with the clerk, are there any people that haven't spoken yet, that have a topic that they want to
And the
have
chairman can
addressed?
allow them to speak.
Right,
Okay.
right.
All
But
right.
if you have it on the agenda, if I came in late, I'd know I have an opportunity to speak. I think it should be on the agenda, that's all.
Every time. Think,
It's-
How we limit it is one thing, but I think it should be
30 minutes,
noted
though.
on the agenda that you have an opportunity to make a public comment. That's all I was asking for.
So Brian, going back to the public hearing, it was very interesting what you just said, because we talked about doing it at second reading, so that if there's changes
We can do
before
that.
third reading, but should we do it at first reading so that people can weigh in? We're just elongating everything, but again, you're listening to the public.
I agree with that. We shouldn't limit.
First reading, that's.
There's, what you have to keep in mind is they need time to advertise. And the
Yeah.
question is, when it comes out of committee, is there enough time between the committee meeting and when you have the first
sometimes
reading?
there's not. Mm-mm.
Well, but you can always put it on whatever meeting you can get it advertised in time for. So you control when it comes to that first reading. It doesn't have to come to the very next meeting after that council meeting. If it's a public hearing that has to be advertised, it comes to the next meeting where you can meet that deadline. It's however you
But what
want to
does
do it.
everybody think about having a public hearing at first reading, so that if changes have to be made,
Sometimes it's pretty rough, what's the first reading. I mean, it's really a work in progress. I mean, I don't know, a lot of times we're ready, but
You get all the council's discussion, but it'd be nice to have the public's input before you make those changes, to make sure you're making all the changes that you can.
well, you end up putting, then you could end up with, and that's fine, 2 public hearings, first and second.
what's
Right.
everybody's preference?
Like that,
I'd like
First
that
and
as
second.
well.
Do a public hearing at the first reading?
first and second.
First and second.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mark? You
Have
think?
you ever seen that?
Then you're advertising twice for, you have to advertise for a public hearing, so there's a cost involved.
That's the problem.
Keep that in mind.
Public hearing, oh, okay.
I know.
Work on their office to advertise.
Okay.
First time I hear you talk about
That's
money.
Got to up the budget for that.
6 months.
People tell me I squeak when I walk.
Okay, I'm hearing people want to have a public hearing first and second reading.
No, I just heard money over here now.
You changed your mind?
Well, could you explain that you have to inform the public how many days in advance of money? Go ahead.
We have to give 15 days notice for any public hearings. So most of the time, if you look at the committee meeting schedule, rolling into the council meeting schedule, there's not 15 days in between when like an ordinance is discussed at committee to go to council. So you would just have to be prepared for that item, you know,
Be
to not
delayed.
get heard until the meeting at the end of the month. Because
And,
we have to have
and
15
sometimes the
days
calendar,
delayed.
I mean, sometimes that's tight for some of these
So
things.
It
Yeah.
could just be the goal to try, it could just be the goal. to try
15
and
days.
First reading, but if you can't make it, don't hold up the ordinance and bring it, have the public hearing at the second reading. It's just, your policy is to try for the first.
It'd be a policy, not a,
Right.
okay. If it's just a policy, that gives us flexibility.
Second.
We would do,
Alice?
yes, sir, Logan?
If I'm doing math right, which it's early for me, I'm not gonna lie. If we do 15 days, that means the second reading, if we do back-to-back hearings, the second reading would have to skip county council meeting.
Still advertise.
No, you
She
can
wouldn't
have,
be able to advertise it in time to know that it can make the next county council meeting. So if it passes first reading, it would not be on the second county council agenda, it would have to be on the one after that.
I think he's right. Is he right, Brian? Yeah. Yeah.
Can't you advertise them both at the first
depends on
reading?
where in the
No,
cycle.
because you
What's the
don't know
difference?
if it's going to pass or not.
Yeah, might
And
not
that's
pass.
waste.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's.
That would delay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a couple of options.
To advertise in the newspaper, and so we have it scheduled for twice a month we publish.
And you could advertise for the public hearing at the first reading prior to going to committee, but I don't recommend that. So that's one
No.
way to make your deadline.
No.
But, like I say, you could have the goal that when it comes out of committee, ideally, if time permits, have that public hearing at the first reading, if there's enough data to advertise and get it in there. But that may be rare, to where it's gonna occur at the second, and I think that's why it usually falls in at the second reading for most of our ordinances. And I would encourage you not to go past that and to move it to the third reading because of the changes, and just bring it back.
Right, okay. So it's a policy and a goal, but we don't have to do it at first reading.
Right.
And there's some items we can't wait. I mean, we've got to get them going through, to Logan's point, right?
Policy would just be to have the public hearing at the earliest opportunity.
Okay, I like that statement, at
You're
the
gonna
earliest.
draft
Well, it's a policy.
It's a policy.
It's a
You're drafting
policy,
it.
so,
Mhm.
okay. We talked about executives, let's talk about executive session. Some counties do it first. If it needs to be longer, a motion could be made to do it another session at the end of the agenda, that, we can always change our agenda. The idea being that the public doesn't have to wait for something to come out of executive session at 9 o'clock at night. That was, I'm sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
Caucus is what you were just.
Yeah, it can be called caucus instead of, I think some of us may remember when we used that term before. Any thoughts about that? And we want to have, he went over very well today, the 7 things for executive session. And executive session should be sparingly used as much as possible, but in accordance with the law, state. Am I saying that right, Brian? State regulations.
Madam Chairman, I like that, since we changed to 6. I don't have to stay.
Won't be here till 10.
We won't be here till 10.
Yeah, so.
Okay,
Ready for some 9 o'clock meetings.
all
Did I
right.
hear that we're gonna
Do-
do the meetings at 9 o'clock, is that what I heard?
8.
I'm trying
There's a
to-
goal.
Well, you'd have to.
Right now, it's at 8
It's 8.
o'clock,
Yeah.
but you moved it back an hour, so you're
Mhm.
gonna keep it at the 8 o'clock and have to make a motion to extend it, or do you wanna change the ending?
Well, York can make a motion to extend it past, he won't make a motion to extend
I
it
think
past
If you
8.
do an executive session in the beginning,
first.
you shouldn't be there
It
until
shouldn't be, I don't
after
think
8 o'clock.
we can leave it at 8 o'clock, see how it goes.
And the other thing, you've been providing us
Yeah.
with information that doesn't need to be,
That's true. Yeah.
discussed in executive session. If it's just blank information, we need to know.
And
Unless I need input, obviously.
unless you
Yeah,
need our
that's
input, but,
different.
you do an excellent job of sending us information we need to know and with your confidentiality statements at it. We'll,
Alice, are you saying you want to do executive session at 5, or do it at 6 at the start of county council meeting?
well,
Go to 5.
we could do it at 5 or
Before.
5:30, depending on what we have on the agenda for executive session.
And there is a provision that if we can't get it done by 6,
We could,
we would stop, hold the council meeting and go back.
Go back, yeah.
What you need to decide is, do you want to have a regularly set schedule for these caucus meetings? Or do you want to have
Yes.
it be a special meeting called and set the time?
no, it needs to be regular
You
schedule.
have to have a calendar to set time.
Right, we'll have a calendar and set time. Mhm.
Logan, what else were you going to say?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, obviously you two are working together. Have you guys thought about, you know, and obviously Alice is gonna run the county council meeting, have you thought of maybe Tab running the executive session so she can focus on some of those items?
Yeah,
Just to help speed some of the stuff along?
yes, we have. I've seen it done that way. I think there may be other, I don't know if there's other counties do it that way or not. I haven't talked to anybody, but that might be an option. So, yeah. So, she was, a middle school principal. I know she knows how to make people behave, so, or
Administrator,
not.
right?
So, that was the main things on my list. So we're okay having executive session first, calling it caucus. It sounds like. We're not taking a vote, we're just talking. And now Tab's going to say a few words about committee reports and meetings and liaison reports, and then we're going to turn it over to Mike Moore.
So I just want to piggyback on executive session. To Logan's point, Brian called me a school marm this morning.
A what?
A school marm, meaning you're mean and you slap people's knuckles like Catholic school.
Like the nuns.
And we've also discussed the fact
Okay.
that during council meeting, the vice chair will run the public hearing part. Probably because I'm meaner, I don't know.
Well,
But,
and we've done
just
it
to
that way in the
switch off a
past.
little bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the executive session could be done a different way as well. So committee reports, we had liaison reports, and we will have committee reports. It's on the agenda. Can you put that back up there, Sarah? So people you can give your committee report, your liaison report, whatever report you want. Many councils do that, including Hilton Head and Bluffton and some of our neighboring ones, where you can speak about that. And then did we put on the end, we were talking about putting people, what is it called at the end, when any member can comment about something? Other than it's a beautiful day outside, the sun.
Yeah, Port Royal and City of Beaufort, it's called council comments at the end.
Yeah.
And we'll limit time.
Discussion?
Yeah, and limit the time on that. And we're going to do that today.
end of the
before
meeting?
At the end of the meeting.
For the public.
For the public. Say there's something special going on in your district that you want to make an announcement about.
Yeah.
Or just things like that. So we're going to do that today, actually, go around at the end before Mike Moore takes over, each council member, if they have anything to bring up, because the public's watching this, so.
There's one other thing, we would not implement the 4 committees in the revised calendar until February to give administration time to coordinate and to give people time to become chair and vice chair. Oh, and agenda meetings, we officially
Tuesday.
decided it's going to be Tuesdays at 2.
Yes, that's correct.
Tuesdays at 2, you'll have agenda meetings, okay.
And you can zoom in for, if you're chair, like Logan can zip in at 2 o'clock and, zoom out. Mark, because we know you guys
Now, we do
work.
have
Rationale on
we have a
Tuesday.
committee meeting Monday.
Yeah, I know, but we don't.
What's the rationale for Tuesday?
It gives Sarah more time to get things together. No, the other restaurant, Wednesdays are just a horrible day.
Well, and if there are changes, it gives more time, instead of Friday afternoon having to change
Hopefully you get
agendas.
your packets are in there.
What's that?
Hopefully you get your packets are in there.
Right.
Yeah, and Mr. Moore thought it was okay. I mean, we didn't do anything in a vacuum, because he's going to carry the brunt of the agenda meetings, getting the AS ready.
If
Yeah.
you do it on Tuesday, can you do it earlier?
I would
Two.
prefer not to do it earlier on Tuesday, because we still have to get everything staffed and into the system, and then I generally meet with the clerk ahead of time, so I understand everything that's going to be presented to you all. So that would cut us even shorter. So I'm okay with 2 o'clock on Tuesday, but I would prefer not to go any earlier than that.
Could you do it on Tuesday later?
We could.
Okay.
Like how much later are we?
Like dinner at your house, Mr. Glover?
Yeah, really.
Possibility, but I was
Yeah.
thinking more or less 4 o'clock.
You better check with your wife
I think
before
that's
you
a
put
great
that out there.
idea.
I'll run that house.
I'm okay with that.
No,
I'm certainly okay with that.
She didn't hear that, did
It
she?
is a public, this is being televised, right? I'm okay with that. It's up to Mike Moore. Are you okay with it? That's kind of late.
It's kind of late, 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock. Okay.
How about 3?
Compromise.
I think we could do 3.
Okay.
Is that,
Is that a better?
I can tell y'all, if it is gonna be 3, I will have to, I won't be able to do it, so I would have to, I'd have to step down the vice chair. I just know there's no way I have to be in that building by 3 o'clock.
Is 2 o'clock better? 2 o'clock's better?
I mean, don't let that dictate you guys, I mean, you guys can make whatever decision you want. I'm just being completely upfront and honest with
What do you
you.
think? Mark?
I mean, 2 o'clock is fine. I'm just throwing options out there.
if, yeah, 2 o'clock works for us. if
Let's do
that works.
2. Yeah, we'll
Okay.
do 2, yeah. We'll bring you a snack or something, whoever. Okay.
If you would turn in your preferences for committee and preferences for liaisons to Sarah before you leave, that would be great. We'll go over it. Anything else? I recapped what we talked about.
Let's go around, we'll start with Joe. Anything from your district, or you want to share with the public today?
District 5, great news for Laurel Bay. The pathway has been completed. Beaufort Jasper Water Sewer is going to be updating their water that has been, more than 50 years old, their water supply, so that's
Yes,
great news there.
1960s, right.
Yes.
Mhm.
Obviously, the 170 corridor, the temporary fixes are now done. Remains to be seen how well they're going to be received because we're lacking some signage. Yeah, that's working fine. Permanent signage to educate the people about getting into the one lane to get onto 278. You still see people all of a sudden stop and then try and cut somebody off, go over the concrete, which is why the barrels are still there. But as far as getting on the 278 loop from 170 onto 278, that's been a wonderful enhancement that you don't have to immediately try and cross over, so that's good. So lots of good things are going on in District 5.
Paul?
Well, Willow Run is on the agenda for District 8. The school board's buying that land, and I'm getting together with some constituents as soon as I leave here
Okay,
regarding Willow Run.
okay. Tom?
Yeah.
Meeting on Hilton Head, you gonna mention?
Oh, my word, there's too much. I'd keep you here all day, but I'll limit that.
No, you can't do that.
I want to take us back to what Tab started with early on and how we've done a lot of good things in the last 2 years. I want to thank the people that came here today from the public, and in particular, Tammy Becker from Town Council. One of the things I try to do, and I think we all try to do it, is how do we get our municipalities and how do we work with them better? And I think that was one of the shining stars for our district the past 2 years. And I go to stormwater. I go to drainage. We came together as a team back in August when Storm Debbie came in. Storm Debbie knocked the daylights out of Bay Pines. And, you know, I said, I'm going to stick my stake in the ground when it comes to drainage with Bay Pines. From Bay Pines, we added in Point Comfort Club, Ashton Cove, Old Woodlands, Cedar Woods, Sea Pines, the entity of Sea Pines, Tide Point, and about 2 weeks ago, Tammy and the town, they came up with this concept based on what we're doing together. We're going to have an island-wide drainage master plan. I mean, this is unprecedented in our county. And, you know, when I first came here 30-some-odd years ago, all we heard about was drainage and stormwater is going to be, it's going to ruin us, right? So here we are coming together as town, county, and doing some very, very good things. So I applaud my colleagues on town council. I look forward to working with them. And Tammy, thank you for being here. Very kind. And, we have a good 2 years, and I want to wish our new chair and vice chair, good luck and God bless and all that good stuff. And, you know, first and foremost, we're here for the people, and we thank you for your involvement every step of the way. The last thing I want to end up with is I'm going to probably involve Mr. Moore. Since Storm Debbie, I have organized and directed this task force, if you will, for stormwater drainage. And to what Mr. Deloach said earlier, I want you to comment, Mr. Moore, on how we've been working together to get the jobs done, working in concert with our colleagues on town council. Is that something we can continue, because we've been able to do an awful lot of work and get things done in the communities based on that? So please help me with that.
And not to belabor, I will get into this somewhat in my remarks, but.
Okay.
But I was going to say, as long as I'm involved in that, the discussions, that's important that, you know, I be kept in the loop with whatever we're doing with our staff. So
Sure.
the direction, I think, needs to come through county administration. So as long as we keep it there, the same with the town, I'm sure, I think we can be in a good place.
Mr. Moore, since August, we had a lot of moving parts with Bay Pines and all these other communities that joined our stormwater master plan, if you will. How has that been? I mean, we've had tons of emails back and forth, a lot of direction, a lot of staff involved. I think it's been going really well, and I think I've included you in every step of the way. Is there anything different that you'd want to see from this councilman here to improve that, to get more work done?
I think in terms of, you know, who the emails are coming to, I think I need to be involved in that. And I
Done.
think very clearly, you know, when it comes to departments heads and below, you know, we need to minimize direction. The direction needs to come through me. So I would just suggest in the future, you know, we involve, if there's any need for direction with staff, it come through me.
Done? Yeah, makes sense. Good.
All right, we'll let Logan go next. Logan, anything you want to mention before?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is, obviously, my goals over the next 2 years is to continue this conversation with Welcome Parkway and 5B. We know that's coming back, and as well as the desire to improve the rec centers, or expand rec centers here in Bluffton, because they are completely maxed out 24/7 right now. They're running 5 and 10-minute shifts to flip these people. These kids getting done with practice at 8:30 and 9 o'clock.
Okay, thank you. York, you have anything to report for your district, or you want to share?
Oh, okay. Thank you, Madam Chairman. First, let me just thank you and Vice Chair for leading this discussion, this workshop here this morning. Appreciate it. Also want to thank Mr. Passerman for his work in the past, and also want to thank him for accepting being on the Northern Regional Planning Committee, since he's in both areas. And then I want to thank Mr. Moore for leading the pathway for the MLK that will be going pretty close, pretty soon be going out for bid. Well overdue, but we just want to thank you for personally handling that. And I think that's enough. Thank you for me this morning, Madam Chairman. So I'll leave that right there.
Okay, Councilman Dawson, any news from your district to share?
Yeah, I represent District 1. Councilman Passman mentioned the completion of the Laura Bay pathway from the air station to the Laura Bay military housing. Unfortunately, that's in District 1 and not 5. Okay, but no, to that point, I'm currently working with the Assistant County Administrator, Hank Admeson, with the expansion of the broadband to the northern part of the county. Council previously voted for an allocation of funds prior to our Christmas break. and we're looking forward to kind of get that process up and running. Also, I have a community meeting scheduled for next Tuesday, the 14th, for the Biggest State Jenkins community, where our Director of Parks and Recreation, Mr. Eric Brown, is going to come out and do a presentation and give the community an update on the proposed upgrades for the center and the recreation equipments there out in that area. There was one other thing, and I don't remember what that was.
Come back to you if you think you want to. Okay, Mark?
Madam Chairman, before we
yes.
go, since Mr. Dawson mentioned broadband, I do have a meeting coming up on Tuesday at 5:30, where I do have all three providers coming to the community, both Brightspeed, Comcast, and Hargray. Yeah, to the
Is it at
community to
St.
let them
Helena?
know
Is it St. Helena?
exactly where their services
Okay.
lies.
Is that going to be at St. Helena
At
Library?
the library, yes,
What time?
ma'am.
5:30?
5:30, yes, right.
Mr. Lawson had a huge meeting last night, I heard.
We had a very good meeting last night at All Joy, and I want to thank Mr. Moore and the staff that came out, because we had a very large staff, and again, a very large show of people that came, and we covered lots of topics. So again, we're looking forward to all those things that we've been, and not just me, I mentioned this before, that, previous council people, Weston Newton, who was a chair, and then Tabor Vox worked on some of these same items that are finally now coming forward. So I can't take credit for it, or this council can't take credit for everything, but again, I appreciate everyone's support and what we've done down there, and staff support as we take each of these topics, everything from drainage to sewer, to the landing, to the beach, to the bike path, to Bailey's Park, to all those things that are in that Bluffton area, not just at Alljoy, but in that whole area there. So I appreciate everyone's that came out and spoke. And again, we will continue. We've got something set up now where we're going to try to have something, a meeting, or at least a informational that goes out every quarter, and then keeps people updated on what's happening with that. I also, in my district, have a little thing called the DeFusky Ferry.
Yes, sir.
Which we will continue to, we're still in a contract with the current provider. We are still monitoring that, and we'll continue to look at that, as well as where we are with the two embarkments, again, to try to make this a permanent thing eventually. So it's not something we have to talk about all the time here on council. Also like to give a shout out and again thank Joe and Larry for what they've done the past couple of years. We've gone through some very, very difficult times, from changing chairman previously when Joe stepped in, to COVID, to a new county administrator, to everything else that we've done. I think they did an excellent job, and again want to congratulate you, Ms. Chairman, for taking over, and you've got my full support as we move forward.
Thank you. Tab?
So in District 6, which runs along 170, I'm going to echo what Mr. Passman said. I absolutely love what we've done at the 170, 278 interchange. I am still shocked that people go over that concrete barrier and bottom out their car, but hey, that's your problem. But we are now going to suffer more congestion down 170 toward the circle, because we don't have the funding to do anything else. I attended First Friday meeting in Sun City last week, and the mayor of Hardeeville and the new town manager, I guess he's called, I don't know, it is Josh Gruber, they talked about their referendum passed and what they're going to do with it, and how they're still going to have to collaborate with the county. Even though our referendum didn't pass, we're involved in the 170 triangle, we're involved in a lot of things, so it was very good to hear them. I echo what Logan said about recreational fields south of the Broad. When we had a chat with the board at Bluffton last year, a lady stood up, the little girl stood up, and she said, my mom has to drive me to Savannah to play soccer, if you all remember that. And other people have complained there's nowhere for them to use the fields. So although we're collaborating with school districts now, that's great. And I appreciate our collaboration with the school districts. One of the things we didn't mention is Alice and I would like to collaborate with the municipalities and the county. Like Port Royal's invited us to a meeting on the 16th.
Oh, that's my thunder.
Oh, sorry. But we need to do that with Hilton Head, we need to do that with Bluffton, Hardyville, and have some collaboration there. I do want to thank Brian. He does all the work behind the scenes, making sure that we are sticking to the law. I know I pestered him on ATAX forever, but we are finally at a good place. So I think we need to remember that's why he's here, to harass us about the law. And Mr. Moore, I assume you'll mention the January 21st meeting? At the corridor meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I'm done.
I have just a couple of things. Town of Port Royal and City of Beaufort have invited all the council members to come to their joint meeting. They reached out to me, and I think several of us, I hope, can attend. It's going to be the 16th at the Town of Port Royal. Mayor Cromer, who is my mayor, the City of Beaufort, invited us to come, and it's at 5:30. It's a round table. We wouldn't be at the round table, but we will be there, and I'm sure we'll be greeted, and I hope people can come to that. And don't forget, last but not least, to fill out your forms today as much as you can. If you're undecided about some, we still need to know what you want to do, and turn them into Miss Sarah. Anything? We're going to turn over to Mr. Moore now.
The town council meeting tomorrow at 1.
Good. I forgot.
278.
Right, 278 workshop?
Yes.
And several people from here will probably, from county council, and I know Mr. Moore and Jared will be there too. So,
I think it was great the council invited us all, so I want to,
kudos for
appreciate
that.
that.
Okay. All right, we're ready to turn it over to Mr. Moore?
Here's a few words.
Yeah.
Few words.
Okay, I just want to say that the discussion here has been great. I appreciate this. Looking forward to a good year. I've had my first 6 months under me now. I've gotten to pretty much everyone's list except for Logan, and we're going to get that scheduled. So, in terms of what we had talked about when I first came on board and during the interview process, that was one of the things to get out and see all the districts. One of the other things we talked about is reorganization. We are in a process with that now. We're finalizing that and working through staff and the implications not only at the ACA level, but at the department head level. The organizational chart will be rolled out to you all very shortly, but I do want to make sure the manual is appropriate with all employees and all their files. And for now, in terms of liaisons to the committees, there's not going to be any change to that. And once that occurs, we will discuss those changes. In terms of the budgetary implications, there will be, I'll just say it, there will be a reduction in the amount of staff and administration at the ACA level. I think that's a good thing because we're going to show that we're going to work to be efficient in our staffing, good stewards of the tax dollars. I just want to put that out there. But I want to be extremely mindful of the implications with our employees and make sure they're all taken care of. Those will be discussed with council at the appropriate time as we need to do that. In terms of the communication, I know we talked about this earlier. I appreciated the presentation today because that kind of lays it all out. But as your administrator, I'm accountable to you all for the staff, for the performance of the staff. And so that's where the accountability lies with me. And being a military person, there's a chain of command. I look at that it's a very important thing. If you have, as we used to say, admirals from other commands coming in and telling their sailors what to do, it's disastrous in a lot of ways. So, and I think the idea is that, our employees, we have good employees, they want to get things done. But sometimes, I don't think you all understand when you tell an employee that something, it's taken, well, I got to do this, right? And it can get us in that. So I say all that to say, it's important that I be aware of what you all would like to get done, whether it be a constituent concern, whether it be, I need somebody to come out and, for example, come by and pick up some down trees from a storm in this neighborhood, and we can work all that. But what I would ask is that, if the assistant county administrators could certainly, include them on the email, I would ask that it come to me, and then we can handle that task. If it's time sensitive, then you can add that in, I think is important. You can always call, of course, if something like that. But we want to be responsive, but we also want to be, directing staff in the proper way.
Does anybody have any questions about
We can
that?
have a discussion on that briefly
want-
if you'd like.
No?
Yeah, I'm going to always respect you as the county administrator, and in my interfacing with any of your staff members, I will either copy you or I'm just gathering information
Sure.
for my district and stuff, so.
It keeps me aware of what you all need, and so then I can follow up.
Right. So most of your staff I don't interface with, but I'll tell you, interface with Patty Wilson because of stormwater, drainage, et cetera, but I've never directed Patty to do anything, nor would she do it. So it's more for information on my part and developing a working relationship with her, and that's what I do with all your staff.
And I think from a policy standpoint, I think he hit on a great point. If there's something that's being done that needs to be addressed in policy, it's certainly things we can bring back to address. If there's personnel policies, if there's policies with stormwater, whatever. I'll just say, I've heard from all of y'all, stormwater is an issue, and I think it's something from.
Not me.
Not from you necessarily. Most all of y'all that have districts with county, I've heard this, so that's something we're gonna be looking at as part of, the structure of the organization. But in terms of things we wanna add personnel, obviously that has budgetary implications, which this body needs to address those holistically.
So just to clarify, when we have something, it goes to you directly, and then you would reach out to, like I've done with you, and then you reach out to Jared or the ACAs. So
Correct.
you're directing staff.
Yeah.
And as I continue to say, we stay in our lane. We're supposed to be policy setting, overseeing the budget, and he stays in his lane, and the bubbles don't meet, only when need be. But we need to respect the fact that you get our emails.
Correct.
Okay.
And in turn, it's my role to direct staff to
It would be helpful if, in our emails, we said this is something don't need immediate answer on, or this is
Right.
something,
if it's time sensitive, absolutely.
either way, okay.
All right, so in the past, I've been including the email to the administrator and the department head to address the issue. So you're saying now, rather than send it to the department head, just send it to you? and
I
then-
prefer it come to me, because, department heads, they're focused very much operational in the day-to-day, so I would prefer to at least understand what you're asking, and then if I have a question, I might ask you, because if I don't understand, I want to be very clear how we're directing the staff to go handle the situation, so that would be appreciated, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else on this topic?
So make me understand, send it to you?
Yes.
Copy it to staff, or just send it to you?
You could send it to me, and I'll take care of it.
Oh, good. Or just
You
send
can-
it to you.
I mean,
Here.
I'm just telling y'all, you can put the ACAs on there, but if you send it to me, I'm gonna take action. And that way it's very clear
you got
for what we just discussed.
And also, John said, when you send it directly to staff, there's a loyalty issue, because
Yes.
and there's a possibility for a hostile work environment if they
Yeah.
don't react to you as a
Right.
councilman.
Right,
Yes,
So that supports that.
right.
right. So I think it's kind of a reset possibly, but I think we're all on the same page. It'll work
Good,
great.
that's good,
And then
that's
I owe
good.
you all an answer,
Right.
and the onus is on me as the administrator, which is where it should be.
Good, okay, thank you.
Great.
Sure. Anyone? Happy to, any other questions? Okay. In terms of employee, if y'all, and I just want to say this, if y'all have concerns about, or, you see, we had a case when I first got here, of an employee vehicle out somewhere, and it was problematic. If it's administration, county staff, those problems, needs to come to me, and it's my job to go, if I need to follow up to an investigation, that's my role with the employees. So that's another thing, if you have concerns about employees or you hear it, that I would ask that come to In terms of communication, we have the bi-weekly that I send you all. I also send you, emails when there are specific events. We don't have to go through that all today, but if you feel that there's information you need to receive, certainly we can look at that as a council. Because I'm always mindful of, if I get something that involves, council needs to go to all of you all, and I know we discussed at the same time, right? So everybody's getting the same information, but what all does that involve? And I think clearly you've got significant weather, natural disasters, damage to facilities, injuries, those are all important things. I've also been asked, if there's personnel changes, could you all be notified? In other words, somebody gets hired, we end up having to remove a person. There's been some requests for that. We had an informal discussion about department heads and above, because I know some of you all work with department heads. Those are things that we've done in the past in terms of resignations with key staff. So any questions or comments there?
Oops, sorry.
In terms of the communication, the bi-weeklies or anything else you all would like to see? And if you think about it, we can have a subsequent conversation with this as well.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, sir.
no, I'm gonna yield to Tom.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Oh, York, thank you.
All right.
I know we're starting off so well here. It's great. We have an incredible staff, and we've been involved with a lot of things. Now, we're being approached by an outside law firm for this investigation. Some are participating, some are not. One of the key things I want to make that we all focus on is that we're not targeting or we're not on a witch hunt. As the administrator, you now know some people are going to participate and some won't. What's your thoughts on that? And again, our focus is to make sure the staff knows that we value them and that, information is information and shouldn't be used against anybody.
Well, I mean, as an administrator, part of my role is to investigate, what I would consider to be violations of handbook, violations of county policies, and so forth. We get information about who potentially could be aware of that. Obviously, I don't have resources to interview everybody on the staff, but in terms of if there's information, I mean, we discussed earlier, things are leaving executive session, or whatever, then clearly we know who's in the room for executive session. So those are areas where we can focus what we're going to do. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't need to go and necessarily interview somebody in Public Works or elsewhere that may not have any role in that. So,
Look, as elected officials, we're different than employees, I guess.
you're
And
absolutely
that whole
correct.
distinction.
I think that goes back to what was discussed earlier, is that obviously I can discipline administrative employees. I don't have that authority, obviously, with council. That's something council would have to make a decision to do, based on your policies, based on what has been put in place, so.
I think York had something you want?
Yeah, let me preference this by saying that you are the 8th administrator in my tenure here on council. And every administrator that came before us had their own organizational structure. And I'm assuming that you're getting yours together, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct, we'll talk about that.
I would hope that, first of all, that longevity is here for you, so I'm just going to say that. So I'm hoping that at some point in time, if nobody else would want this, I would love for you to arrange some of your department heads to make a presentation to us or to me about their roles and what they're doing, et cetera, et cetera. For an example, I can't define the role of stormwater and public works. I overlap them, but I know that they're distinctive and they have their own function and stuff like that. So it'll be good to have sessions with each layer, directors, administrators, et cetera, presenting to council in a workshop setting, just information, this is what I do, blah, 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 that sort of stuff.
Discuss potential workshops.
Yes,
Certainly,
that'd be great.
that would, how I'd be envisioning workshops, right?
Yeah.
Is you all would, we could go in a little bit deeper on what a department does.
Right.
And where you all may see shortfalls and where, we would want to make potentially policy or personnel changes.
Mhm.
And this goes back to the stormwater issues in the town, within the town. But clearly, we're collecting, revenue for stormwater, and I think we need to be mindful of what structure we have in place to go address the issue.
That's true, right.
So I think.
That'd make a great topic for a workshop, to depart, once you put your new organization in place and
We
to,
could set up, where, we could even do that, to where we do workshops and kind of run through the different departments.
responsibilities, so that, great,
So,
okay.
I think that's a
Sure.
good suggestion.
Yeah, that'd be great. Because even when you take something like recreation, there's a commission, and then there's council, and then there's the director of recreation, and, sometimes, I don't know who's in charge of recreation at times, but that's something we can talk about.
Okay. Got that as a note. And I think that covers most of what I wanted to go over, but I think in terms of direction to staff, I think we need to be mindful of when is policy versus just going to go out and take every issue today. So that, one of the things I like to do is to make sure that if it's a will of council, that the administration, if you all want us to go do something, I want it to be very clear that it's your council decide. And I think that goes back to what was said earlier, is that, we're getting clear direction in administration, so that, it's very difficult if I have 11 folks trying to do something different, it becomes overwhelming. So, Brian and I discussed this to make clear that sometimes if if somebody's interested in something, that we give clear direction to administration to go, okay, go look at this and come back and
Right.
that's one thing I kind of want to be mindful of.
And we have to always keep in mind, we have a limited budget and what our priorities are, and that will come when we go through the budget workshop too. And
That will come up.
so we can't go in 11 different directions. We have to have consensus. One other thing, just for council members and for you to know, if by any meetings where others can attend, like LARTA or other kinds of meetings, I pledge to give feedback to everyone in writing, like a Reader's Digest, I call it Reader's Digest summary, like Beaufort Memorial Hospital Board, things like that. And I want other committee members and other liaisons to do the same. You can share, as long as it's not something discussed in executive session, like for all of county council to know what's going on. When I go to Port Royal Council meetings or City of Beaufort, sometimes there's nothing really to report back, but I would hope all of us can report back any news, either in an email or at our meetings when we do. Is that summarize what we want
Yeah,
everyone to report back what's going on, so, because we can't all go to all the meetings. It's not possible.
And I watch Hilton Head meetings online when I can't sleep at 2 a.m., and I watch Bluffton online, and I watch this is no joke, because I can't go to them all due to my other responsibilities, but when something pops up like that first Friday I just talked about, we could share it. But I
Everybody can
watch them
share.
all online. I know, it's sad.
We'd like Councilman Dawson to hear feedback from your meeting in Big Estate, too. I mean, you have probably more meetings with the public than
Yeah,
anybody
you're number
else.
one.
Okay. Well, you have quite a few, which I admire. That's great. Anything else?
Just be mindful, we are public servants.
We are public servants.
Do you want to talk about the workshop on the 21st? Is it finalized, or
We,
so they can get on their calendar?
in terms of the corridor project, yes, we are looking to do a workshop in the middle of the month, 21st, depending on, we're going to contact use SCDOT, Department of Transportation, and we would like to come back to you all to make sure you have the background on the corridor project, where we are today in terms of we need to provide responses to the Infrastructure Bank, we've been given a deadline of March 31st, as well as DOT has given us a deadline of March 31st to have a decision on what they want to do, what they're gonna do with the bridge span. To me, that's one of the issues facing us right away in the new year. And DOT is gonna have to make a decision because the one span on the eastbound 278 is gonna end up being load limited at a certain point. And they want to make sure that's been addressed prior to that occurring, and they need to make a decision here very shortly. So therefore, in a workshop, we can present information, there can be discussion. Obviously, workshops can't take action, but I think what we can do is provide you with all the information. I'm planning to attend a meeting on this week at Town of Hilton Head, as well as Jared, and we're gonna continue to bring that back here. But ultimately, a decision is gonna need to be made by this body, because we know we have funds from the 2018 referendum. They're allocated to this project. We have an IGA, intergovernmental agreement with the State Infrastructure Bank. That would have to be renegotiated, so that will all have to come through the council, and it will all have to come through, as if we have the same deadlines before March 31st. So that's something staff's gonna be very closely focused. But if we can get all the information together, we will target the 21st and present that in the workshop.
Thank you.
That will be our
And
goal.
we were going to do it at Buckwalter Rec Center.
Right.
Well, I think we've got another, I looked on the calendar.
We have a meeting that day.
We do have another meeting that day, so
It's at Buckwalter, I think. That's what, isn't it?
we could do that as part.
Oh, it's here.
As part of that.
Yeah.
So that's going to be in the morning or afternoon?
But right now, it's, I don't have, I think it's a 3 o'clock meeting for the committee, if I'm not mistaken.
And then
Ladies
we
at 3.
all discuss 1 o'clock workshop.
For the workshop, 1 o'clock
will be right at 1 o'clock.
at Buckwalter.
Would that be,
Televised, it'd be televised too, right?
okay.
The committee meeting that day is public facilities.
Yeah.
Right.
Isn't it 4 o'clock, Sarah?
The committee's at 4, because we haven't switched to the new.
It's 4.
And didn't we talk about also inviting Hilton Head to join us at that workshop?
We could certainly invite them. I
Yeah.
don't know if we're calling it a joint workshop, but it would be similar to they invite us.
Like they
We can
invited us
attend
to
it.
We
tomorrow.
can certainly invite them, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Their town manager extended the invitation through me to you all, so I'll be the
Yep.
same.
Okay, anything else? If not, we'll adjourn, and thank you for all the time. We
Look forward to it with you.
Thank you.
finished 3 minutes short of noon.
Thank you.
Some time back.
Right, all right, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
It was just before noon.